I never imagined my own parents would one day treat me like I didn't exist. But that's how my story begins. I'm Becki, 30 now, and if you want to understand why I carry so many scars that don't show on my skin, you'll have to go back with me 17 years to when I was just 13. At that time, I wasn't spoiled, but at least I mattered. Mom and Dad would ask how my day went, sometimes take me to the movies or let me stay up late on weekends with popcorn and cartoons. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Enough that I thought I belonged in our little family. Then came the announcement. Mom stood in the kitchen one evening, her hands trembling with excitement as she pressed them against her belly. "You're going to be a big sister." Becki Dad's grin stretched from ear to ear as he added, "Isn't that wonderful news?" I remember smiling, trying to match their joy. The thought of a baby seemed exciting, even magical. I even spent an entire weekend painting the nursery walls yellow, Mom said. It was a smart color, gender-neutral, and stimulating for the baby's brain. I still remember the smell of the paint lingering on my hands and the aching in my arms. But I didn't mind. I wanted to help. I wanted to matter. When Emily was born, it was as if someone had flipped a switch in my parents' brains. Overnight, their love narrowed into a tunnel that only led to her. "Did you see how she smiled today?" Mom would gush, clutching Emily like a trophy. "She's so advanced," Dad said once, though. Emily was just drooling on his shirt. Meanwhile, I walked in one afternoon with my report card straight A's, the kind of thing most kids would be celebrated for. I held it up proudly, but Mom barely glanced. "That's nice, honey. Can you grab a diaper from the closet?" Her eyes never left Emily's face. The paper trembled in my hands. I lowered it slowly, my throat tightening. That was the first time I realized the world could erase you, even while you were standing right in front of people. From then on, the conversations that used to include me became background noise about baby food, Bran's nap times, or Emily's so-called brilliance. I started staying in my room, more often retreating into silence, though the walls were thin and the house too small to truly hide. At night, I would stare at the ceiling, listening to their laughter from the living room, the laughter I used to be part of. Sometimes I tried again. When my sneakers ripped open at the toes, I asked for new ones. Dad sighed, like I had requested a Ferrari. "We'll see, Becki. Money's tight right now." The next day, they came home with a brand new swing set for Emily. It was like that for a whole year. A year of being invisible in my own home. I began eating in my room, not because I preferred solitude, but because at the table I was either ignored or ordered to fetch things for Emily. I caught myself once in the mirror while brushing my teeth. My face looked strange, tired in a way it shouldn't have at 13. I whispered to myself, maybe they just forgot. Maybe they'll notice again. But even then, some part of me already knew the truth they weren't forgetting. They were choosing. Still, I clung to the faint hope that something would change, that Mom would suddenly look at me the way she used to, or Dad would ask me to watch a movie with him again. But those hopes shrank smaller and smaller until one ordinary afternoon turned everything upside down. I came home from school, dropped my bag by the door, and found Mom waiting in the hallway. She wasn't smiling. Her face was set, her hands gripping the strap of her purse so tightly that her knuckles had gone white. "Pack your things," she said flatly. "Just the essentials." I froze, half expecting her to laugh and say she was joking. "Why, is this because I forgot to empty the dishwasher yesterday? I said I was—" "Stop asking stupid questions," she snapped, her eyes avoiding mine. "Your father and I have made a decision. You're going to your grandparents." The words hit me like a slap. My throat went dry, and for a moment I couldn't even breathe. I wanted to scream to ask her how she could say something like that, as if she were talking about returning a sweater to the store, but no words came, just silence and the heavy sound of my heartbeat in my ears. Mom didn't hug me, she didn't explain. She just turned, grabbed her car keys, and said 20 minutes. Be ready. And that was it, the beginning of the end. The ride to my grandparents' house felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. The car hummed beneath us, the smell of Mom's perfume, sharp and suffocating. She gripped the steering wheel so hard the veins in her hands bulged, her knuckles pale. I sat in the passenger seat, my backpack slumped at my feet, staring out the window as the familiar streets blurred past. "Mom," my voice cracked. "Is this forever, or just for a little while?" She didn't answer. Her jaw tightened, and she pressed her foot harder on the gas. Silence stretched between us, louder than any argument could have been. I wanted to ask 100 questions. What about school, my friends, my room? But the way she stared ahead told me the answers wouldn't matter. When we pulled into my grandparents' driveway, a lump swelled in my throat. Their house was familiar summer barbecues. Christmas mornings, the scent of Grandpa's pipe tobacco lingering in the walls. But this time, everything felt different. Grandma opened the door. She looked at me first, her eyes soft but pained, and then at Mom. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Come in," she said, voice clipped. Mom shoved my bag into the entryway. "Here she is," she announced, like she was dropping off a delivery. Grandma's gaze darted to me, again filled with something that looked like fury, but wrapped in sorrow. "Becki, sweetheart, take your things upstairs to your room. I'll call you down soon." I nodded, throat too tight to speak, and picked up my bag. My legs felt heavy as I started climbing the stairs. But halfway up, instinct stopped me. Something told me I needed to hear what was coming. So I sank down on the step, clutching the railing, my heart hammering. From below, their voices carried up. "She's your problem now," Mom said sharply. "From today on, Becki lives with you." Grandma's voice snapped back, angrier than I'd ever heard. "Lisa, you can't be serious. She's your daughter." "Well, she's your granddaughter, and frankly, this is your fault anyway." My stomach flipped. Fault. You're the ones who insisted I keep her mom spat. For a moment, the words didn't make sense. Keep me like a dog from a shelter. I was going to have an abortion. Mom continued, her voice rising. I was 20 years old in college, with my whole life ahead of me. But no, you and Dad pushed me to marry Rick and have the baby. You promised you'd help. We did help. Grandma's voice cracked, trembling with both rage and grief. We gave you money for years. We bought you the house you're still living in. That was years ago, Mom snapped. Ancient history. Look, Rick and I never wanted a kid that young. Now we're 34, financially stable, and Emily is the child we actually want. We're putting all our resources into her. Becki costs too much. We can't afford both. Cost too much. Unwanted. Mistake. My vision blurred as tears welled my whole body, trembling on that stair. Every cell in me screamed to run down, to beg her not to mean it, to demand an explanation. But I didn't move. I just sat there frozen, listening to my own mother peel away any illusion that I had been loved. Grandma's voice wavered. "You heartless girl. She's your child. Flesh and blood. How can you—" But Mom cut her off. "Don't call us. We'll send some money when we can." The slam of the door rang out like a gunshot. I waited, listening to the silence settle heavy over the house. Then I crept upstairs, dragging my bag behind me. My room, still covered in the childish drawings I'd taped up years before, felt like a stranger's. I dropped to the floor, curling against the bed frame, my tears soaking the carpet. She never looked back at me, not once, not even to say goodbye. That night, as I lay in the unfamiliar bed, my mother's words replayed over and over. Emily is the child we actually want. Each repetition dug deeper until the pain felt unbearable. Somewhere between sobs and silence, I made a decision I would never ask them why again. I already had my answer. Living with my grandparents was different. At first, everything felt off-kilter, like I was walking through someone else's life in borrowed shoes. Their house smelled of lavender and old wood, and though it was warm, I missed the sound of my own door creaking, the posters on my bedroom wall, even the hum of the faulty radiator that used to keep me awake. But my grandparents tried. They asked about my day at dinner, actually listening to my answers. Grandpa would tap his spoon against the table and say, "Tell me something you learned today, Becki. Something that surprised you." It was such a simple question, yet no one had asked me that in months. School quickly became my refuge. I buried myself in homework, stayed late in the library, and raised my hand in class until teachers finally noticed. Their praise became a substitute for the approval I used to crave at home. My grades weren't just good, they were exceptional, and for once people looked at me and actually saw me. At home, Grandma packed my lunches with little notes tucked inside. "Have a wonderful day. We're proud of you." They made me smile, but also ache. They were the kind of words I used to dream of hearing from my mother. Still, something in me kept hoping that maybe, just maybe, Mom and Dad would realize they'd made a mistake, that they'd call or write or come to see me, too. Then, about a month after I moved in, Grandma handed me a small box wrapped in blue paper. "This came from your parents," she said gently, her smile a little too forced. Inside was a thin bracelet, the kind you'd find at a mall kiosk. No card, no note. I slid it onto my wrist anyway, pretending it meant something. Over the next year, more gifts arrived. A keychain, a generic stuffed bear, a pair of socks with the tag still dangling. Always small, always impersonal. Grandma would add, almost casually, "Your mother called today. She asked about your English paper, or they're proud of you, you know." I wanted to believe her. I tried to. but the doubt gnawed at me. Something about the gifts felt wrong, like they were chosen by someone who didn't know me at all. That suspicion grew into certainty one Saturday at the mall. Grandma and I had split up. She went to the pharmacy, and I ducked into the bookstore. As I stepped out, arms full of novels, I froze. There at the jewelry counter stood Grandma, and in her hands was the exact same bracelet I'd been sent a month earlier. My stomach dropped. I didn't confront her right then. Instead, I walked out quietly, my mind spinning. On the bus ride home, I stared at the plastic bag in her lap, the tiny wrapped box inside. My chest felt hollow. The realization wasn't as painful as I expected because deep down I'd known all along. The gifts, the phone calls, they were too neat, too perfectly timed. My grandparents weren't great liars. Still, it hurt. Christmas that year broke the illusion completely. Grandma handed me a box, eyes shining too brightly. "This is from your parents." I looked at the wrapping, the exact same style I'd seen her buy the week before. My throat tightened. Slowly, I set the box on the table without opening it. "Grandma," I said softly, "I saw you buying this." Her smile faltered, cheeks flushing with shame. "And Mom isn't calling to check on me, is she?" I whispered. "She hasn't called you at all." The silence that followed was louder than any answer. Grandma's eyes brimmed with tears. "We just didn't want you to feel unloved, sweetheart." I swallowed hard, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. "It's okay. I'm not a little kid anymore. You don't have to protect me from the truth. They left me. They moved on. I get it." The calmness in my tone startled even me. Inside, my heart felt shredded, but something about saying it out loud made it real and strangely freeing. Grandma's hands trembled as she reached for mine. "We love you, Becki, more than anything." And for the first time, I truly believed her. From then on, the fake gifts stopped. So did the imaginary phone calls. The house felt lighter without the pretense. It was just us three people trying to stitch together some version of family from the scraps I'd been left with. It wasn't perfect. It would never replace what I'd lost, but it was real. And for a while, that was enough. By the time I was 15, life at Grandma and Grandpa's had settled into a rhythm. We weren't a typical family, but it was steady. Dinner together every night. Homework at the kitchen table with Grandpa leaning over my shoulder, explaining math problems, in that patient way of his. Weekends spent helping Grandma in her rose garden while she told stories about when she was my age. For the first time in years, I felt safe, maybe even hopeful. That illusion ended one ordinary evening. Grandpa was sitting in his armchair, half asleep, with the TV murmuring in the background. I was upstairs cramming for a history test when I heard a sound, strange, muffled, not quite a call, but not silence either. I rushed down to find him slumped forward, clutching his chest, his face contorted with pain. "Grandpa!" My scream tore out of me as I grabbed his arm. Grandma ran in from the kitchen, eyes wide with terror. She fumbled for the phone, dialing with shaking hands. "Stay with us, Harold. Stay with us." The minutes blurred into flashing lights, paramedics rushing through the door, the cold bite of night air, as they wheeled him out. I remember clinging to the porch railing, whispering desperate bargains to the universe. "Please don't take him. Please not him too." But he was gone before we reached the hospital. The funeral was small, hushed. I sat in the pew, staring at the casket, my fists balled in my lap, trying not to cry. Not because I didn't want to, but because I had to be strong for Grandma. My parents didn't show, not even for that. After the service, Grandma's hand shook as she clutched mine. "He was my whole world," she whispered. I'd never seen her look so lost. That night I lay awake, listening to her soft sobs through the wall. Something inside me hardened. I couldn't let her carry this alone. But grief wasn't the only shadow that fell over us. Without Grandpa's pension, our finances crumbled almost overnight. The pile of bills on the kitchen table grew taller each week. I caught Grandma staring at them with her glasses slipping down her nose, sighing like the weight of those envelopes could crush her. So I made a choice. The grocery store a few blocks away had a handwritten sign taped to its window, "Help Wanted, evenings and weekends." The manager frowned when I applied. "You're only 15. You sure you can handle it?" "I can," I said firmly, though my hands trembled. "I have to." He gave me the job. Minimum wage. Hard hours. But it was something. I worked after school, bagging groceries, pushing carts back in the rain, wiping down counters until my arms ached. On weekends, I stocked shelves until my back throbbed. Some nights, I came home so exhausted I collapsed at my desk, my cheek pressed against open textbooks. But when I handed my paycheck to Grandma and saw the relief flicker across her face, the exhaustion felt almost worth it. Still, the cost was heavy. I had friends once, or at least acquaintances, but they drifted away when I stopped going to football games, birthday parties, or even just hanging out after school. I didn't have time. My life became a loop: school, work, homework, sleep, repeat. One Friday, a classmate caught me mopping the grocery store floor. "You're always here," he said, half pitying, half confused. "Don't you ever do anything fun?" I forced a smile. "This is my fun." He laughed like it was a joke, but when he left, I gripped the mop tighter, swallowing the lump in my throat. It wasn't fun, it was survival. By junior year, I'd mastered the balance. Straight A's, advanced placement classes, late night study sessions, wedged between shifts. Teachers started whispering about scholarships, even full rides. My guidance counselor slid brochures for prestigious universities across her desk and said, "With your grades, Becki, the sky's the limit." The words lit something inside me. For the first time, I saw a path forward out of the weight of bills, out of being a burden, out of the shadow of a family who didn't want me. At night, while Grandma slept, I stared at the ceiling and made silent promises. I'll get out. I'll make it. For both of us. I didn't know it then, but those promises would become the lifeline I clung to when the next storm hit. Senior year arrived like a tidal wave. My days blurred into essays, application forms, and the endless refreshing of my email inbox. Every rejection would mean more hours at the grocery store, more debt I couldn't repay. A scholarship wasn't just a goal, it was survival. I applied to 12 schools, a mix of state universities and private dreams. Late nights, I hunched over Grandma's old typewriter, hammering out essays about perseverance, resilience, and the meaning of family. Each word felt like a plea. See me. Believe in me. Give me a chance. The waiting nearly broke me. Every afternoon, I rushed home, pulse racing, as I checked the mailbox. One rainy Tuesday, an envelope arrived from Westfield University, one of the top schools in the country. My hands shook so hard I almost ripped it in half. I tore it open at the kitchen table while Grandma hovered her eyes wide. "We are pleased to inform you." I screamed, then laughed, then cried all at once. Grandma clapped her hands together, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Oh, Becki, I knew you could do it." Westfield had offered a partial scholarship, 70% of tuition covered. It was life-changing, but the 30% left was still an impossible mountain. I did the math 3 times, my chest tightening. Even if I worked full-time, even if I starved, it wouldn't be enough. More letters trickled in. Acceptances, offers of aid. Then came the one that settled it, a full-ride scholarship to State University. Tuition, room, and board, all covered. It wasn't Westfield, but it was freedom. Still, Grandma couldn't help herself. One evening, she picked up the phone and dialed my mother. I was in the kitchen, sorting through essays, when she put the call on speaker without telling me. "Lisa," Grandma said, her voice falsely bright. "I have wonderful news. Becki's been accepted to Westfield. They've given her a partial scholarship. She just needs a little financial help to make it work. It's a tremendous opportunity." For a moment, there was silence on the other end. Then my mother's voice came cold as stone. "We're not spending money on Becki. She's hopeless. We're saving for Emily. She's the one who's actually smart and capable." The line went dead. The words echoed in the kitchen like a curse. Hopeless. I sat frozen, my heart pounding in my ears. I thought I'd built up enough scar tissue after years of abandonment. But hearing her say it out loud, hearing the contempt in her voice, it cut deeper than anything before. Grandma's face crumpled. "Sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I thought maybe—" "Don't," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Don't apologize. I should have known better." That night, I made my choice. State University had offered me everything I needed, and more importantly, it meant Grandma wouldn't have to worry about money. I sat at my desk, pulled out a scrap of paper, and scrawled a note to myself in bold letters. Never contact Mother again. Ever. I folded it and tucked it into my journal. A promise. A boundary. As I stared at the words, something shifted in me. It was as if the last fragile thread connecting me to them had finally snapped. I was no longer their daughter, and I refused to be their victim. Walking onto campus that first day felt like stepping into another world. The air buzzed with chatter and possibility, 1,000 lives unfolding all around me. For the first time, I wasn't just the discarded daughter or the burden. I was Becki, a college student with a shot at a future. Pearson Hall. My freshman dorm smelled like ramen noodles and laundry detergent. My roommate, Zoe Chan, breezed in with 3 suitcases and an easy grin. She stuck out her hand. "Nice to meet you." I don't snore, but I do sometimes talk in my sleep about calculus problems. I laughed, really laughed in a way I hadn't in years. "I'm a deep sleeper. You're safe." That was the beginning. Zoe was everything. I wasn't bold, spontaneous, unafraid to take up space. She dragged me into late night study sessions, coaxed me into campus events, and when exams loomed, she shoved energy drinks into my hands and declared, "We're not sleeping until we conquer this." Somehow her chaos steadied me. For the first time, I felt like I had a sister one who chose me, not one handed to me, and used as a weapon against me. By sophomore year, I needed a job to cover small expenses. Zoe tipped me off about a cafe where she worked. We spent hours behind the counter at Cafe Laurel, wiping tables, pulling espresso shots, rolling our eyes at difficult customers. It became our world, a refuge. But Zoe had secrets too. One evening after a long shift, we were closing up. She leaned against the counter, twirling a rag in her hands. "So, my dad's coming for graduation. He wants to take us out to celebrate." "Us?" I asked, puzzled. She hesitated. "I've told him all about you. He's impressed with how hard you work." There was a weight in her tone, something unspoken. When I pressed, she sighed and said, "My dad owns Chin Enterprises, the investment firm." I nearly dropped the mug I was drying. "That Chin Enterprises, the one with offices in 3 cities." Zoe nodded, looking embarrassed. "Yeah. I didn't want people to know. I wanted to prove I could do this on my own without connections. That's why I live in the dorms. That's why I work here." I stared at her, floored. Despite having everything, Zoe had chosen to walk a harder path, not because she had to, but because she wanted to earn her place. I respected that more than I could say. Graduation came. The auditorium swelled with families clutching flowers and cameras. Grandma sat in the front row, tears streaming as I walked across the stage. Afterward, Zoe introduced me to her father. James Chin was tall, imposing, but his eyes were kind. When he shook my hand, his grip was firm, grounding. "Zoe tells me you're the hardest worker she knows," he said. "I admire that. How would you feel about interviewing at my company entry level, of course, but with room to grow?" I could barely speak. "I'd be honored, sir." 2 weeks later, I started at Chin Enterprises. Zoe joined too in product development. We swore to climb the ladder together, not as heiress and charity case, but as equals. The corporate world was brutal. Endless reports, impossible deadlines, late nights under fluorescent lights. But I thrived. Each task completed felt like reclaiming another piece of myself. My supervisor began trusting me with more responsibility. Zoe, meanwhile, was a storm of innovation, tossing out ideas that made executives lean forward in their chairs. She was being groomed to take over one day, though she never flaunted it. We moved into a small apartment near the office, splitting bills, covering for each other when life got messy. It wasn't just friendship anymore, it was family. Years blurred in a rush of promotions and long nights. By 28, I was promoted to assistant financial director. At 30, James Chin called me into his office. "Becki, your performance has been exceptional," he said, folding his hands on the desk. "I'm promoting you to financial director, effective immediately." I almost dropped my coffee. "Thank you, sir. I won't let you down." He smiled, lines crinkling around his eyes. "After all these years, please call me James." That same week, Zoe was officially named CEO as her father stepped back. At our celebration dinner, she raised her glass and grinned. To us, the dynamic duo, we made it. I clinked my glass against hers, warmth flooding me. For the first time, I wasn't looking back at what I'd lost. I was looking forward to everything I'd built. But peace in my life never lasted long. And the past the family I thought I'd buried was about to claw its way back. I was 30 when the knock came. 3 sharp raps against my apartment door, echoing through the sleek, quiet space I had built for myself. When I opened it, the past stared back at me. My mother, my father, and beside them a teenage girl with my same eyes, Emily. "Becki," my mother said, her smile stretched thin and brittle. "May we come in?" Stunned, I stepped aside. They swept in, their gaze sweeping over the polished floors, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the granite countertops. Envy flickered across their faces. "Nice place," my father muttered, running his hand along the counter as if testing its worth. I crossed my arms. "What do you want?" The smile fell from my mother's face. "We're having some financial difficulties. Emily's been accepted to college, and we need help with tuition." For a moment, I could only stare. Then a laugh burst from me, sharp, bitter, uncontrollable. "Let me get this straight. You abandoned me, ignored me for 16 years, and now you show up on my doorstep because you want money." "It's not for us," my mother snapped, her voice sharp. "It's for Emily. She's your sister." I turned to Emily. She shifted uncomfortably, eyes on the floor, her fingers twisting the strap of her purse. She looked more like a hostage than a daughter in that moment. You made sure she wasn't my sister, I said quietly. You decided that the day you left me at Grandma's and never looked back. You're being cruel, my mother hissed, and selfish. You don't have children or a family to support. You can easily help. Family helps family. The hypocrisy burned. My father chimed in, his voice gruff. It's the right thing to do. After everything we've done for you. That broke me. Everything you've done, I cut him off, my voice rising. You mean throwing me away like garbage, pretending I didn't exist while you spoiled Emily. Telling Grandma I was a mistake. That's what you call everything you've done. Silence thickened the air. Emily's eyes darted between us, her lips trembling. Get out, I said finally, my voice low, steady. Now. My mother's face twisted with rage. You'll regret this, Becki. You're nothing but bitter, ungrateful trash. The words stung, but I didn't flinch. I opened the door wide and waited until they stormed out. Emily trailing last, her eyes flicking to mine for just a second apology, or maybe longing before she disappeared down the hall. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. 2 days later, Zoe called me into her office, her brow furrowed. Someone phoned the company, claimed you forged your degree, that you're a fraud who might embezzle funds. My stomach turned cold. Anonymous tip. She nodded grimly. I laughed it off. But Becki, your parents are really something. I clenched my fists, fury buzzing in my veins. They hadn't just asked. They'd tried to destroy me when I said no. I acted fast. The company lawyer drafted a cease and desist letter. Security at the building and my apartment were alerted my parents were not to be allowed inside under any circumstance. The threats stopped after that, but not the whispers. Grandma phoned one night, her voice tired. They're telling everyone you're ungrateful, that they sacrificed everything for you and you turned your back. I pressed my palm against my forehead, closing my eyes. Let them talk. The people who matter know the truth. And I meant it, because at 30 I had finally built a life of my own choosing. A career I was proud of, a best friend who was more like a sister than Emily ever could be, and a grandmother who had stood by me when no one else would. Family, I realized, isn't about blood. It's about who shows up. I don't owe my parents forgiveness. I don't owe them money or sympathy or a single ounce of my peace. What I owe myself is freedom from their toxic grip, their manipulation, their endless hunger. That night I stood at my window, city lights glittering like stars below. For the first time, I felt the past finally loosening its claws. They had made their choice long ago, and now I had made mine. To live without them.